In this video, we will be diving into what inspections are and what types of inspections there are. My name is William Singh. I'm a local real estate agent in the Portland, Oregon area, and let's dive into it. So you will have an inspection period when you buy a house. This is typically about 10 business days, but this can obviously be shortened or lengthened depending on the situation. In a hot seller's market, this might be something where buyers will decrease the inspection period, and maybe in a buyer's market, the inspection period might be longer. Just realize it kind of depends on the situation, but there is a time for the inspection period usually. You can also waive it entirely. But with that in mind, let's dive into the fact that all inspectors are not equal. And realize that I work with a wonderful inspector. So if it comes to kind of scheduling those and having them come in, I usually have a preferred inspectors to make sure that you get the best quality service and understand the house that you are buying. If you find any of this content helpful, feel free to like, subscribe, and share this content. It would mean a lot to me. All right, so we'll be diving into the first major inspector or inspection, which is the general inspection. This is one of those things where think of it as a primary care doctor. They're able to kind of understand and see everything and are then able to refer out if need be. So this inspector will go through the crawl space, will check everything in the house, but they will not be putting any holes in the walls or anything of that nature. They're just going to inspect kind of from the outside. They'll also be going through the attic and seeing if there's any issues of that nature. If there are any issues, they will usually recommend a contractor or a specialty inspector to go out and inspect further. Just realize, again, this is a general home inspection, so they will not be able to dive into walls or anything of that nature. The cost of this typically is around $300 to $500 for a single family home. And when you start diving into plexes, typically that will go anywhere between $600 to $1,000 just for this general inspection. Because remember, when you're diving into plexes, think of that as each individual houses that need to get inspected. Another major inspection is the sewer scope. This is one where you are having someone come in and they will get this giant line that has a camera at the end of it. They will then push this through the drainage system to see if there's any leaks, cracks, or intrusions onto this line. This is very important because of the fact that you usually don't want your sewage or anything of that nature starting to pool somewhere on your property. And the way to actually fix these can get pretty expensive. So with that in mind, it is a very important thing to do on a standard single family home. When it comes to condos, usually the HOA will be taking care of any of the exterior things or kind of anything that kind of goes outside of your unit. So that might be something where the HOA would be able to cover it. But again, you want to double check with the HOA and make sure that it's not your issue. With this in mind, the cost of a sewer scope is typically about $150. So remember that this is going to be on top of the general inspection and they are treated as separate inspections. They just are inspecting different particular things. Another common type of inspection is a radon inspection. This is when the inspector will essentially put a device in the home and will allow it to absorb radon. And this is when one thing to note about radon is that it is a naturally occurring gas. You typically find a lot of accumulation of this that will be in basements and things of that nature. If you ever see white pipes, pretty thick, like maybe 4-inch diameter pipes, what happens is that they'll actually find kind of the deepest part of and they will put some sort of ventilation in there. And that is the way to mitigate radon. Radon is a harmful gas that, again, just needs to have mitigation, and that could be a potential issue that comes up. And you'll usually only see this with basements, but there are obviously other situations where that is or becomes an issue. With this in mind, the cost of this is typically about $150. Another type of inspection is an oil tank locate. When homes were heated, they were heated with a large tank that was put into the ground and then fed up into the house. This was commonly seen between 1900 to 1985. So realize when you have older homes, this might be a real issue. And what happens with these tanks is that if they go on and are not decommissioned properly, what will happen is that they will leak into the surrounding soil and will become a environmental hazard. This is not good. This is one of those things where it can sometimes be an easy fix, where the tank is filled with a compound that will neutralize the oil and the components of that. Or it might be one of those things where you actually have to excavate the entire thing out of the ground, and that can get pretty expensive. You'll usually find these on a lot of homes that are in the inner Portland area because of the fact that they are typically older homes. As you move further and further out, you're going to be having a lot more homes that are newer and will not have these, or may not need to be scoped for this. Again, it's really up to you whether or not you want to do it, but the cost for these is typically about $130. And one of the next common inspections that you'll do is a well or septic inspection. This is one of those things that if you are not connected to the public water system or public sewage system, then you usually have some sort of system, which is where all your waste goes to, and then also a well. It is very important to make sure that you inspect these because of the fact that if you have water that is poisonous, then obviously that's not the greatest thing to be having come through your faucets. The cost of this is something that is usually around $250 to up to $600, depending on what is needed, because there's different drainage systems and things of that nature. And in terms of testing the water, this is a cost that can be anywhere between $350 up to $600 based off of what type of tests you do. Whenever you're kind of understanding the cost of these, always estimate to be at the higher end of these, just that way you are being a little bit more conservative with your numbers as well. And when it comes to these types of properties, they are typically not in the city, or they are something that has an older structure to it. So just keep it in mind that this is not the case for a majority of the homes in Portland, but it is something that does come up, especially when you get out to more rural areas. I only mentioned the most common inspections you do, but there are a few more inspections like mold and termites, but that is something that is not as common for us to do, and is something that will most likely be where if you get the general inspection, you want to add another inspections on top of that, then you can do that. Once you have the inspection, usually you'll get a document or some sort of footage within about 1 to 2 business days. This is when you're able to really assess and see what this home you are buying is, or what this property really entails. If you found any of this content helpful, it would be super helpful for me to have you like, subscribe, or share this content and help someone else. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And until next time.